Welcome again to another wallPen podcast, the art and business of wall printing. Again, I am your host, and I'm here with Marc and Mark, the founders of wallPen North America. Today's episode, we're going to talk about the art. So you're an operator, you're working along, you have a client, they want to do something, but sometimes you get stuck at that one piece of like, what exactly do you want to put up on the wall, on a door, whatever the case may be. So today we're going to talk about that aspect of the business, talk about the art, the artists, where to source art, and some of the services that you can also get with wallPen North America. So let's start in. Let's just start talking about it. Let's just do it. Let's pretend I'm an operator and I have a client. They want to do something and we're sort of stuck. Like they want something magnificent. Maybe they like giraffes. I don't know. I'm just throwing out an animal there. Maybe they like whales. What's the next step? Like how do we go about sourcing different pieces of art and, sort of refining that process there?
Very common question. What do you do about the art? And I think probably the most common question that we get is, do you have a catalog? It's a natural extension of how you want to sell, right? We call it the gap. It's the distance between somebody agreeing that they think wall printing's fantastic, they have a great wall, they like the price, they're all good, but they just don't know what they want. How long between them agreeing to like, this is fantastic and I want this service, until you're actually signed off on artwork and putting ink on the wall? And that's a challenge. And the idea that you could create a catalog, understandable. It's one that we've pursued for many years. Basically, our process doesn't really lend itself well to catalog choices, mostly because by the time you show someone a catalog where they're picking through, first of all, it's a ton of work up front to cover every idea somebody may or may not have. We're talking thousands, tens of thousands, maybe millions of ideas of various ways that you could interpret that. And then, nobody, how many people, maybe I'm ignorant to this idea, but like how many people really pick a tattoo out of a catalog? And they're like, that's the koi fish I want. Most often I think what you're going to find is like, I like this and I like this. Can you put them together? Or this is the general idea of what I want. Can you put some ideas together for me? And so by the time you do a catalog, like you're going to end up customizing it anyways. So you're going to need a methodology, a way of doing that so that you can give the customer that personal touch, which ultimately is what you want to do. It's a custom print. Not to say we can't go and just mimic something, of course, but, more often than not, I think people want to do a custom. And that was a challenge for us. I'll give you just a little bit of backstory and I'll let Mark jump in on this. But when we first started this whole business, got involved in this technology, I was fresh on the heels of working with large interior design companies, large design build companies. Those spaces have designers in-house and they're going to be providing the artwork. So the vast majority of the jobs that I personally was witnessing and some of the things that I've commented on earlier episodes of like how it goes working with interior designers and what they want, some of the challenges, artwork was not a consideration because again, they're much more talented than I am on what's going to look good, how to customize all that good stuff. So when we first started, innocent and young as we were, it was the idea was that we were going to present the market as a printer. Basically, we're sort of a blank slate. We white label it effectively. We don't tell you what you print. We make that an offer for you. Let you pick your own things. And I'm just going to tell a quick story about why we moved away from that and what we moved towards. And then we'll let Mark jump in and kind of talk about some of the techniques and things that we've done to develop that. And the story is from Detroit. This was early days, if you can believe it, pre-COVID. That wayward time before we were all stuck in our house. We were working with a design company up there, and there was just this fantastic opportunity. And it was such a good opportunity for us to showcase why you would use the printer. The artwork itself could be fantastic. It was the top floors, the executive suite of a building, and there were these long hallways. It was like you walk off the elevator and you can go left, you can go right, and down these long hallways is about 40 feet of 10-foot high, white, brilliant, walls, like just fantastic, exactly what you're hoping that you can accomplish. So we're talking about, no joke, probably about $30,000 or $40,000 worth of printing is what we were quoting, which was accepted. And we found ourselves stuck in that gap that like they agree. Now, how do we do it? And we were not offering in any capacity. We were saying, get yourself sorted with your graphic designer, and then we will come in and print. And What we found was the graphic designer was actually their vinyl printer, their preferred vinyl printer. So first of all, there was a natural contention of like, well, she would have preferred to use vinyl for obvious reasons. That's going to increase her margin. Understandable, but I think we were okay. I think she understood like where we were at with that. The problem was her idea of artwork was vinyl. Her idea of what was possible was this like cut out, simple clip art style of graphic. And so we walk into this space and I'm thinking like Detroit, let's do a skyline. Let's do some like really massive sort of street art. Like this could look incredible, 40 feet, and every executive's walking by. We could do something spectacular here. And after a lot of back and forth, the conclusion that what they wanted out of the graphic on this 40-foot wall was I'm just going to say it, stupid clip art tree. It was like this dumb, like very basic tree on one side. And then, no joke, a 40-foot purple line down the hallway. That's what they thought was the aesthetic that they wanted to go with. So like a foot high, solid color. And I'm not joking, stipulated in the contract was like, we want to make sure it's perfect. The line has to be perfect. And you're sort of like, we are going to be spending all day printing the dumbest print. It's solid color is challenging for any printer, even vinyl printer. Like I wouldn't use this tech to do that. That's a perfect example of setting up some painter's tape and painting. Like why would you need to print that? It doesn't make any sense. There's no point. And it left us, basically we said no. We basically walked away from that job. And in the phone call drive home with Mark, like I was just on my rant of like, we are never going to find ourselves in a situation like that again. I can't believe where they went with the artwork. And if you started looking at the psychology of it, they just fell into what they normally do, which is like, how do you get graphics? Well, they're not the expert. The graphic designer is. That graphic designer is not doing us any favors. They're not aligned with what we want. And B, they see the world a certain way. That's what made sense to them. That's what they consider to be a good aesthetic. Maybe they didn't even realize what we could do, even though we showed them and demonstrated all the things that I would say we did more than enough to show you what we could do. It's not the same thing as connecting all the dots and providing like creative inspiration for how to UI. That's a pretty specific and intense skill set to be able to ask somebody out of it. And from that day onwards, we were open for business on custom artwork. And I'm not joking when I say like, literally, if I had to draw the stick figure myself, that's what we were at least going to have it as an option, if nothing else, to keep other people out of it so we could explore what the creative vision was. And that's when we basically opened up premium design services. It was basically like, we are going to be muralists in the digital sense, and neither Mark or I have a lick of, we don't have any artistic ability. I suppose we could make the case for creative, but like really not well versed. Even at the time, Mark, I don't think we were really doing a lot of Photoshop.
No one bought your stick figures.
No one liked it. I don't know why. Not even my mom. Everybody hated it. Yeah. But I'll pass it over to Mark. Sort of like that was the day, that was the job and the moment that we decided, like, no matter what the challenges are, like we have to incorporate the ability to shorten that gap. And like, if we have to take that on and essentially event our own process, that's what we're going to do.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so James, Mr. Customer, looking for something like a giraffe or a whale on their wall, like our process has evolved now to a point where we would have that discussion. Part of creating artwork that's going to live in somebody's space is having a personal discussion with them to understand what they're looking for, what they're about, what the space is about, so that we can draw inspiration from them to be able to create something. So it's not just a giraffe hanging out in the middle of nowhere. It has more meaning and context to it, right? And that's great direction. You have a vision for what you want to see on your wall. A lot of the times we just get vibrant, big and colorful, whimsical, like these very abstract kind of adjectives and words. And so starting from either one of those points, we then take that inspiration and based on the conversation, we present our interpretation of what you think in three kind of different, crude, but different ways, pulling inspirations from online, pulling inspirations from any resource that we can find. And, option A, option B, option C. And then through those types of communications, we eliminate two of those options and pick one and then refine to a point where we all agree on the aesthetic, the style, as well as the meaning of the artwork. And then, that takes us into a whole slew of, okay, how do we create that artwork? Are Mark and I actually going and doing the Photoshop ourselves? No, we are definitely not doing that. But we do have a team who can. And then we also pull from other areas of our community in the web, right? Working with artists is another great example of something that we can do, pulling an artist's artwork in and using it for a customer.
Right,
Yeah, I'll
right.
touch on that a little bit further. That's our preferred method if we're being honest. You know, when we first started this business, it was one of those things of like Mark and I've always loved the advent of technology and art. Like that's such a fascinating space, especially as engineers. Like we get it. Like not everybody's gonna like lose their mind over 6mm bolts. You know, like there's a lot of aspects to like the technical side that like we could wind up a classroom full of young engineers of like the cool stuff and the cool aspects of our technology. But, like that's not really as interesting to the wider population, to the market that we're trying to go into. The bringing the art and the artistic and that full blank slate creative mindset to it is really, it's very interesting to bring those two together, and the closer we bring them together. And that's something that I think we want to make a very specific and concentrated effort to explain. We want to work with artists. We would prefer to work with artists. I would love to just promote somebody else's work. I mean, there's so many more talented people than us. Like, there's so many people with vision and these things that, like, honestly, that for us, that's an aspect of the business that we really want to push forward. And what we're offering is essentially the opportunity for somebody to take, you know, maybe an iPad size graphic or something that they doodled or a vision, and give them the ability to like you can make a bit of money, like just letting us have a one-time license. There's no risk, like we're going to go do anything else. It's going to live on the wall. That's what it does. We can make it huge. So that's pretty cool when you think about it. Like I could take a doodle on your paper, and we have tricks and tips that we can do to like scale things up. It won't necessarily be perfect, but like it'll be good enough that's going to look really like good on the wall. And by doing that, what we're creating, and this is a great option for our operators too, is to consider like the artist is going to be thrilled, the customer is going to be thrilled, and we're going to be thrilled. We got 3 different points of contact, all of which can market at the same time. Credit the author. Who doesn't want, like, I mean, if you had a choice, would you put a poster up or a signed poster? Do you know what I mean? Like which of the two? There's obviously value on the idea that like I got this person's custom piece or I got this person's thing signed off in my foyer. Like you can see how that gives it a personal touch. It gives it not even just a personal touch, it gives it a storyline that becomes incredibly powerful for anybody who comes through. And then we're fostering all that goodwill that we want to foster with the creative types and say, this is a new avenue for your artwork that you maybe didn't consider, that like, yeah, sure, you can distribute your art as like canvas prints or these things, but like this is a really interesting, fascinating way to go through that. So we love doing it for those reasons. And our operators, we always encourage like just reach out and find out like one-time license fees, see what they want for it. You know, giving someone a few $100 for what amounts to basically just give us the work, we'll do the rest of it. Like that's a lot of people like that. A lot of artists are happy to work with us. Yeah,
that sounds awesome because like not only like you have your client, then you're including the artist, and it could be like a local artist. That
totally.
local artist is more likely going to bring people into that location, whether it's like a coffee shop or whatever else, to like not only check out their artwork on the wall, but like, hey, have a coffee while you're there. And there's sort of like incentive too for the artist to say like, okay, well, I've done one. I know where there's like 5 other like vertical prints that we can do. And I would be, and I know the owners because I sit there a lot of the time and whatever else. Come on over, let's do another one. You know, it's like a great way to start building like the business up too. I love it.
The artist side of things is really fascinating, and it's something that we've been uncovering as we start to present these options to our customers, because there's a whole bunch of cross promotion that we can talk about that, you know, really helps all the businesses and the artists involved. There's also a layer of personal touch, more meaning, a bit of ethos with a print that comes from an artist that you can tie into the graphic in your space. It's not just a thing on the wall for decoration. It means something. I can give you 2 examples that we've done that, you know, really rang true and is what sparked us to continue to pursue this avenue. One was a coffee shop who was looking for something on his wall, but, you know, he wanted it to kind of represent what he was trying to accomplish, which was, you know, a green approach, less waste, all of those types of things. And so he wanted something of the natural aesthetic. Anyways, we ended up finding an artist out of New Jersey, Tim Jeffs, who we absolutely love working with and have worked with on multiple things. And hopefully we can bring him onto the podcast at some point. But he does, it's called Scientific Illustrations, and he draws hand sketches with pencil crayons and pencils, these hyper detailed, super realistic kind of animals, right? Larger than life, all of these things. And so he had a whale that we've coined Big Blue. And Tim Jeff's ethos with these animals is this love for the natural world. And, there's contributions from his work that go towards charities and things supporting that cause. And so this bringing together of the artist and the business owner just like made sense. And for us, like the print looked amazing. So we ended up printing a 13-foot humpback whale, which in Tim's Jeff world only exists in kind of a, poster card form that he drew originally, high res scan. And it now lives permanently on a wall in a coffee shop with a nice little blurb underneath it about like the importance of our role in the environment and all of those types of things. So that's such a huge impact on the space, and also just an incredible way for these two like-minded individuals from completely different worlds to come together on something, and it benefits everybody. And the cross promotion for everybody down the road. I mean, we're 2 years out from that print, and we are still seeing posts that get shared across the artist and the coffee shop. Just an incredible opportunity, and one we loved working on. We kind of got to be in the middle of this whole thing, and it resulted in an amazing print that we like to showcase as often as we can.
Yeah, I love that, because there's so often where people will be like visiting like a coffee shop, for instance, or even like a retail store, and they'll be taking like selfies of themselves, and to have like that as a backdrop because it is so beautiful. Like now that artist is not only in that coffee shop, but they're also being promoted throughout other people's social media pages and whatever else, right? And also the coffee shop's being promoted. It's just like another way to build their own individual business. I love it. It's great. It's cool.
It's a good way to look at it is to call it like, and I'm not sure how much of this is an industry standard, but like experiential marketing, the way that we always look at it is, those wings, like what I should do is I should print myself some angel wings, like one of those Instagram girls like behind me. You know what I'm saying? Like that is a thing that like people will go, maybe I will. Maybe I'll do that for the next podcast. But like that is something that like people kind of go to get their Instagram shots. It's something that we've always kind of wanted to introduce into it, is like you would put it because you want to go see it, like you want to go get your picture taken in front of it. There's even I can't remember who has brought it up. One of our customers wanted to do a hybrid, so you would print the front of a plane, and we would put a physical propeller coming out of the graphic. You know what I mean? It's like you kind of hybrid the two of them, so that it's like, it's not just that you get the graphic, you also get like this very interesting kind of abstract design coming out of it as well. So there's any number of ways you could look at it. It would be a good idea for our customers, our operators, I should say, to when describing like the benefits of wall printing and the things that they can offer, is like, it's a great idea for a brewery to have a wall that people like taking pictures in front of. It's a good idea to have something that stands out. There's a big reason to have things on the wall that people gravitate towards, that they're going to want to go see. And working with an artist is a great way to do that. Like we've been saying, all that cross promotion and everything that comes from that. Yeah.
That's awesome. I absolutely love that. So you guys are talking about like the service. So I guess artistry is like one way, and it sounds like probably like a very compelling way to do it, because you're tying in so many different things. But like, are there other types of ways to get art that you guys have? Like, are there other, like outside of artists? Like if I can't find an artist, like are there other like quick sort of like ways and that you guys have seen success with?
Yeah, just to plug our own service really quickly, we call it the Premium Design Service. We have our creative team and a creative led by our creative director. Like 100%, you do not need to be an artist, nor do you need to know really, besides the basics of Photoshop for getting it into our wallPen software to create a wallPen file, which is very basic. You can use us to create your artwork. Obviously we have a team, we have experience, we kind of know what to do with the graphic to make it stand out and work well with the printer and all those things. And the key to the whole thing, the real challenge of it comes to like making sure that you're controlling your costs as you go. Like custom's great, but it can be very expensive if you need a lot of revisions. So what we offer is infinite revisions. It's a flat rate. And then basically you're going to give us that mood board, we call it, as Mark was alluding to, like give us a sense of what you want. Right? Is it, the Cleveland Browns, and I want the skyline, and I want a football? Give us some sense. Okay. And then do you want a graffiti style or watercolor, maybe more corporate logo? Each of those things kind of needs, not going to say a different artist, but like, graphic design and Photoshop work isn't the same thing as art, isn't the same thing as graffiti. None of those are really necessarily going to be coming from the same source. So by using us, you can kind of cover your bases. We'll give you a flat rate. for what it, here, say it's $500, that will cover you so you can keep iterating with your customer to eventually land on a final design to make that come to reality. And it works well too when you consider like it. One of the best sales tools that we would use, honestly, is to render for people. If you want to know what like a cold walk-in, how to take that to the next level, like take a photo of the wall, render some ideas of what you think would look good for them. Man, if you can shorten that gap where it's like, let me give you 3 ideas of like, I took a look at your logo, I took a look at what you guys are doing. I really think one of these would look really great. It's great to be able to offer that without paying a fortune for it. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you don't know what they're going to pick or if you're going to need more work. And so all that to say is like, that's an option. Don't ever feel like you have to be artist operator. Like we had Joel on last week. Like he obviously is an incredibly talented guy behind the scenes. He can do a lot of that himself. That can be a fairly unique skill set. So you're welcome to use us to leverage that and go forward. And again, as a part of our training, if you'd like to sit down and have us go through our process, which Mark, I'm sure we can comment on at this point of like what we consider to be much more curation than actual fundamental design, we'd be happy to step you through that as well. So whatever we can do to support people, it's obviously what we're here to accomplish.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about, that's how we think about it. And as operators, I think that's a good way to think about how you present artwork. You don't have to be the artist. You're a curator, right? I'm going to help curate your experience. I'm going to help curate the artwork for your wall, for your space. And together we're going to come up with something that looks great and that everybody's happy with. And that involvement with the end customer, I alluded to this in a previous show, but like that involvement really gets them tied into the experience and they feel like as if they were a part of it, which they absolutely were. And that adds, again, another layer to the whole experience, which, again, I think just makes it a lot better. Just that. It's just better. Putting a sticker on the wall from a catalog that nobody had any involvement with that got pushed down to the intern, it got made, a decision was made, and then it was thrown up. Like nobody's ever really happy with that. It doesn't elicit any sort of emotion. If we can elicit a positive emotion when you walk into a space with as simple as a wall print, like, I mean, that's a win in my books.
Oh, totally. And like, especially having like a client, and I keep going back to the coffee shop, but I know there's like tons of different other examples, but like having that coffee shop owner look at that wall print every time they open up their shop and know that they had like a little piece of involvement with that going up on the wall just gives them that little bit more pride. And also, again, I mean, I'm constantly thinking of like, just like ways of like promoting like more prints. Like that coffee shop owner is going to talk to his other business friends who say like, hey, did you guys see like the whale that's up on my wall? Like I had these guys come in and it was like this magical robot that printed all the way across here. And it's absolutely amazing. He's going to want like, to help promote the wall printer for other businesses that he knows and other business owners. It's like an incredible way to do it. Yeah.
In that case specifically, we happen to have partnered with an actually a very good businessman. So his business expanded and he opened up another coffee shop. And sure enough, we put, instead of a whale, we put a massive peacock, beautiful, colorful back on a brick wall. Same artist, because he loved working with the artist. He loved the promotion. He loved what the artist stood for. And the artist was just, Tim was just so incredibly happy to be, working with us again and working with this coffee shop and seeing his art continue to progress through a city that, he's never been to, or at least doesn't live in, like he's all the way across the pond.
Well, he did end up going to Toronto, and he made a specific point of going to the coffee shop to check out his work. I remember, he posted about it. Yeah. Well, who wouldn't, right? It's sort of like if someone took a big picture of me and put it on a wall, I'm going to check it out. Like, maybe that's just me, but I'm definitely going to look at it. Yeah.
And then how like, are there limits to this? Because I remember like in a previous podcast, you guys were talking about how, man, it was like 17 feet high, 30 feet. Like it was just massive on scaffolding. Like, I guess like going back into like some of like the more technical aspects of this. And I believe that Jeff also commented on this a little bit too, but just as a reminder, like, are there like, what's the limits to like how big we can go with like a print on a wall in terms of like art?
It's a fundamental shift in thinking about the graphic itself. Like probably the number one thing that I would say we're coaching out of the gate, and like, I'm not going to call it headwind, but like something that we are always up against is the idea that like a lot of our thinking of graphics is keeping it in a box, right? Like if you think about our monitors are rectangular, picture frames are rectangular, posters are rectangular. Like, you don't really get this amorphous style of art as frequently and often as we would like, because the second you step outside of that rectangular constraint, like, you can start doing some very, very interesting detailing. You know what I mean? So that's probably the first thing, is like, don't think of everything as a rectangular graphic. One of the things you're going to address in your artwork is finding a way to deal with that border, so that it looks more organic. Now, I say this, Joel was on last week. He did a ton of business where he took high-res photos and printed them rectangular, and they look great. Okay, so this is not necessarily an indictment against anybody who goes that way. It's just to make sure that you're opening up the possibility to understand that, like, we could have printed the humpback whale with an ocean around it, but like, how much cooler does it look that like the wall is the ocean, that it fades in, right? I'm going to be doing some printing here. I'm in the Smoky Mountains. So one of the things I want to do is, like, there's obviously a billion photos, high def photos of the Smoky Mountains. It's a very common, like, it's a common tourist thing. Everybody's got a picture of something great. But if I do it in a way where the clouds around the mountains fade into nothing and it just fades into the wall, so that the white clouds, kind of like, your brain just starts doing things where you're looking at it a lot differently than you normally would. And I would say that's probably the first shift you have to make in this discussion, is making sure that, like, you realize that, like, you can do amorphous, you can do a different style altogether than what we're traditionally used to thinking about, which is like more of a wallpaper, right? A wallpaper or a full covering or a picture frame with, like, you know, hard edges and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. It's like, again, it's like all about like incorporating the artwork within the space, and it just becomes one with the space.
Yeah, and that can have its own challenges, right? To answer your question a little bit more directly, it's like, sometimes, you know, you want to put the location right where it's going to look good. So, like, I had this fun print where when I was in Florida, a very common, like, the cutest animal you've ever seen is what's called a burrowing owl. And it's these tiny little things. They're like little chicken nuggets. They're like this big, and they're like adorable. They're everywhere. They're all over this island. And they like perch, like they burrow in the ground, but they perch on these little sticks. And someone asked me to print onto a light switch and make it look like the owl was perched.
Oh my God.
Like, it was really cool idea, right? It's like, okay, that light switch presents problems because we do have to dodge objects and things like that. So I ended up doing two different prints. I printed, one was the owl, and then I printed just his little talons on top of the light switch to make that happen. So yeah, there's always things you're going to want to do. That's sort of the experiential aspect of the printing that you want to make sure, like, yeah, I personally, I love it when they do things with, like, the fire extinguishers. Like, you guys ever seen, they put the guys, it looks like he's wearing a scuba tank, and the scuba tank is the fire extinguisher. Like, it's kitschy. Right. I'm not saying it isn't, but like, I always get a kick out of that kind of thing when you use the space to your advantage, you know? And so, yeah, it's definitely, you want to be mindful of that. Like, if you're putting it in a location that's not straight on the ground, straight printing, for us, typically we would charge for that, because it's a bit more of a challenge to make some of those coordination efforts happen. There's a bit more thinking and stuff that goes with it. So yes, I would say it enhances the print overall. That would be my assessment of it. But it's something that does add challenges. You want to make sure that you're pricing it accordingly.
As far as the hard limits go, you know, just general rule of thumb, you're talking about 3 to 4 inches from each corner, and the maximum image size is 11.5 feet tall. And then, barring any sort of obstructions, you can just keep the machine rolling. It's an unlimited width. Yeah,
that's massive. I don't. Yeah, that's massive.
It's huge. You really don't appreciate 11.5 feet until you like set it up and see this towering robot with a motorized head rolling up the wall, and then just like so far above you, you know. And when you're actually printing that full size, it just consumes you. It's a billboard at ground level, which is, you know, insane. Yeah. Mark's got a massive wall in his space that he's going to be looking to print.
I'm super excited. So we're in the new Asheville headquarters. It's going to be, I mean, I'm going to endeavor to make it the biggest, most detailed, most amount of ink we've ever printed. Like, we have done that 35-foot print, 11.5 feet tall, but it wasn't like 100%. It wasn't like a full square rectangle of printing. It was a bit more scenic. So it almost like was maybe 30% blank. Like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this, because I have no idea where I'm going to find the artwork or who I'm going to engage to do this. I really, really, really want to do a Where's Waldo. I really want to do like 20, 30 feet by 11.5. And I want it to be like every square inch, like you can go and see a different scene, which again, like is preposterous. I guarantee you by the time I print it, you're going to see like 6 things in the element. But like, that's the kind of stuff we love working with. That's like, there's so many opportunities there. And I will make this a very big feature piece. If you follow our channels and stuff, you'll see me like deliberating. I'll probably have to print it a few times till I get something we like, but it's going to be like showstopper, which is what I always go for when I'm trying to like, given we have space, when I'm trying to create. If I bring someone in, I want their jaw to hit the ground and be like, oh my God, I cannot believe what I'm, that's always what I'm after. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm sure I can make a very pretty picture, but I want it to like really stand out. And again, that's sort of like you start considering some of the experiential things we want to do. Another thing that I want to do is create a adult coloring book. So I want to print just the black outlines, and I want to have like a tray of Sharpies. And if I have customers come through, I'm going to say, pick a spot and like color in for me. You know what I mean? And like, and it's just like, on and you think about that extends to the muralist as well, of like, dude, I would love to work with muralists. Let me save you a bunch of time on your murals. Let me make your mural business way more profitable. I am not trying to take your business, not by a long shot. I'm trying to enhance your business. I do not want to do your work. I don't want to do the art side if I can help it. I have ideas on how we can be creative, but I'd love following people's vision a lot more. So for me, I look at it and go, if I just print you on my fastest setting, like a faint trace, an outline of like what you want, again, what I've heard from muralists is that like you're working on, say, like a 1 foot by 1 foot on a 20-foot mural. How do you keep scale? Like, how do you even know how big should I make the face relative to how big? That's tricky. That's tough, And you look at the response, a lot of people use projection. There's a lot left to be desired with that. There's a lot of reasons why that's technically challenging. For us, we could show up, we could do a quick setting, we could print out just this like tracing thing, and you could go in and then add your magic to it. Because again, there's lots of reasons why hand painted is going to look incredible, right? We're not trying to detract from that. We're just trying to make that an option, right? We're trying to merge that technology to the art,
Yeah. I love the collaboration, because like it's not like you're stepping on someone else's foot. You're working with them to help them to make even better art, and like in places that are more difficult to get it done.
And dare I say more profitable art, dare I say actually, because again, that's a thing. And I get it. I really dig like artists. I think that mindset is very cool. Like Vinny Chase from Entourage. Like, I love that. I'm above the money. Yeah. At the end of the day though, if you're going through all this work, it's nice to get a lot of to get paid for it is better. Like, you're not going to convince me if you had a choice, like, unless you're that cool, in which case, like, maybe I'll just like sponsor. I won't charge you anything. We'll just like, if you're that cool that you take no payment, maybe we'll match you on that. But if I could offer you, these muralists are charging, like, they're expensive, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000. If we can make that more profitable for you, or simpler, or instead of only being able to do 3 or 4 prints or murals a summer, we can make that 10 or 12 and give you more freedom and more ability to do that, run with it. Like, again, down with capitalism. I'm with you guys. Like, that's cool. But like, getting paid is a part of a business. You know what I mean? So if that's in any way a consideration in these things, like, I think it'd be smart and it would behoove you to look at what we're doing and say, like, we're not detracting from the art. Or at least we're really trying not to. That's really not our objective with this thing. We're trying to distribute the art in a more technologically savvy way. Which is a classier way of saying we're trying to automate, I think.
Yeah, it's a common trend with Mark and I. Previous business was kind of in woodworking and fabricating, and it was early days, and we got into CNC technology, and we get brought up against the same kind of feedback. In that business then and this business now, there's a subset of an existing industry that is just like down with technology, right? And it's there. I think, anything that's going to disrupt, you're always going to have that. But there's always a much larger group of people who see it and immediately recognize the value that it can bring for them. And so, in the woodworking community, it was pretty clear CNC technology was going to be the thing that was going to help advance production shops. And with this, we're starting to find now that a lot of artists, and muralists specifically, are coming to us, like Mark said, for things like scaling and improving efficiencies. Muraling is hard. I've spoken to several muralists. It's incredibly hard on the body. I mean, like, physically demanding, right? You're up on scaffolding, you're going up and down ladders, you're down, crouched down, you're up close. It's just like, it's a taxing event on your body. And so if you can minimize that, then you're going to be able to mural for much, much longer of a career, right? And so we've had an artist who came to speak with us to find a way to help her shrink the time of her her projects because it's just 3 weeks on site, hands and knees up on ladders. It's just too much to bear, you know?
That's crazy.
So, you know, again, something I would have never have considered. You know, it's just a world I was never a part of. But it's fascinating to me to learn these types of things and, you know, eventually be able to partner with a lot of these people to make those types of improvements. You know, that's kind of been the theme for Mark and I's, you know, overarching career, is trying to merge this kind of tech and art. It's just something that's always fascinated us, and I would imagine to continue to do so.
Yeah, that's cool. Like I'm thinking of like the outlines. Like the first sort of thought I had was like, we're always telling kids not to draw on walls. We're telling them like, hey, make sure don't touch that wall. But imagine if you had like an outline of some sort of design from an artist, local artist, and like kids could come into like a waiting room for a doctor's office or wherever the case may be, pick up some markers and start coloring in the artwork. So now you have like another like community artwork piece filled in by random people who stop by and just start coloring while they're waiting for their next turn to do whatever. Like, man, I love it. I love the integration of like the art and the space, the usability of it all. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's just, again, this is just two engineers like spitballing over a number of years. Like if and when we tap into the actual creative community, and maybe I'm being too disparaging on us, I do like our work, but you know, there's just so much to be done. There's a whole, I have long held this belief that there's a whole industry out there for furniture printing that, like, you know, you look at how many people are flipping furniture on Facebook Marketplace. Like, we love Gary Vaynerchuk. That's one of his like big things is go garage sailing. I think he's right. Yeah. Shout out to Gary V. 100%. You know, I love the idea of bringing graphics to places that like you traditionally wouldn't expect to find them and seeing what the reaction is to it. You know, so like let's bring furniture as an example. Why wouldn't you print on furniture? Well, I mean, honestly, it's a huge hassle for the sign shop or whoever you're trying to get the printer to like bring in this random object they've never seen before, introduce it into their production schedule, you know, like without being, I mean, think about it. It's going to take them half a day just to get it set up. Like, how much can they realistically charge you to make that worth their while? You know what I mean? Like, at some point you got to price it out. I don't blame them. It would. If I was thinking about running like a flatbed printer and someone's like, cool, I brought this dresser in. Can you print on the top? You know, or what I want to do, like one of my things you'll see on my channel is like, I want to do the insides of the drawers. So when you pull them out, like it's like a turtle shell. For me, I have this obsession with this idea of like surprising you. You know what I mean? It's like the insides of kitchen cabinets. I want you to open up and be surprised. Like that's a thing that I've been into it forever. Awesome. Klauser hates it. He thinks it's a stupid idea. I'll show him. It's sort of ongoing competition. But like you look at it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
You would never really do it because it would be too expensive relative to what you would gain. And then, you know, if you're partnered with Klauser, he would hate it anyways. So, you know, why would you go ahead and do it?
No, it was Klauser. You should take your cabinets off and print on them. I think it'd be a great idea. I was like, I'm just going to wait for you to get your cabinets, and I'd love to see it. I think it's a great idea, too.
Yeah. I think there's a whole industry around adding this personal touch to objects and things that you traditionally wouldn't expect to find or wouldn't expect to see, that like we just as a society haven't integrated this customization to the physical world as readily as our phones and some of the other things that you can accessorize. That like, yeah, I'm really excited. I've got this, just a little plug for Asheville Concept Inc. We just launched, right? We've got office space. That's where I'm sitting here. A huge part of the endeavor is to show the business end of it. You know, this is day one, wall printing in a brand new city. Like, I don't know anything about the city, if we're being perfectly honest, besides where it is and how to get to my office. Like, that's about my extent of where I'm at in the city. Like, how do we break into the business? But another part of it is going to be, how did we reach into the creative community? What are we doing to foster this? So that's a huge aspect of our business that we're trying to give back to the creative community, of like selfishly to bring them in. Obviously we're going to benefit, but to have that like common ground of like, look, the machine is an investment and you probably should invest, unless you're sitting on a lot more money than me. You should invest with the idea of an ROI. You should be running this as a business. That's too bad, because I'd love to see what somebody who doesn't necessarily have the money, you know, looking at the art community, generally speaking, not exactly the most profitable space to find yourself. Like, how do we make that technology more accessible? So down here, what we're planning on doing is having Friday open house. And what I want to do is I want to say, like, basically bring in your project, bring in something that you traditionally would be too expensive or otherwise we would, and let's look at it and say, how can we do something really surprising or shocking or interesting that we normally, nobody would ever bother with this normally. Klauser would throw this out the second he saw it. But the rest of us who like creativity and creative things, like how would we approach this in an interesting way, you know? Yeah, so that's a big part of some of the things we're seeing going forward is how do we make this more accessible, especially to the people that maybe can't get into the business back end of it. How do we bring in some more of those things, you know, because we'd love to work with more people more often, see how do you integrate this art into what you're doing already? How do we scale and distribute your art in a way that maybe gets you a little bit more revenue? There is that Venn diagram, you know, in between art and technology that we think there really is just a sweet spot with this machine that is going to show you things you just never really would have considered otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah. That also touches upon a point where it's like Mark and I have been doing this for, you know, over 5 years, and we have more ideas than we have time or follow through.
Definitely.
You know, so whether it is artists coming into our shop in Nashville or you're an operator, you know, we always encourage, and a lot of our operators are taking us up on, book a call, let's spend an hour and just do this, right? We're doing this now because like we need an outlet, right? This podcast is a great outlet for us to be able to talk about a lot of this stuff. Like we do this with our operators as well. We have a ton of ideas. Like some of those ideas might work for you, and I'd love to be able to just give them to you and watch them flourish and watch you make money with some of these things, right? So, you know, Mark can attest to this. Like we'll talk for days. We've got ideas. I mean, we spent half an hour before this call pitching ideas. You know, like.
No, speaking of, I was talking to one of our customers yesterday, and in the middle of like what you could do with it, very, very cool guy. I really hope he buys it because he's on the design side, which, you know, I love. Like, it's like, dude, let's make it happen. You know, let's get some actual talent behind the creativity. But we were thinking about it, and I was thinking about this space here. I've got the T-grid ceiling. I'm going to take the tiles in my boardroom, which is basically just me, you know, in my boardroom. I'm going to take the tiles down one by one, and I'm going to print. This is exactly why I need a creative person, but I'm going to print clouds and sky.
Something.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be clouds and sky because it's like that's an easy one. Like, let's be honest. What do you expect to see? If it's not trees, it's going to be a sky. But like, you could literally just come and take each tile down, right? Print on it, hang it back up, print on it, hang. Like, to do something like, would you ever send this to a sign company to do it? Like, probably not. I mean, maybe. I'm not going to say no, definitely. But like, that would be expensive. And like, again, what are they going to charge? Whereas for us, it's like, dude, I'd love to. That sounds great. I'll show you guys the pictures when I'm done with it. I think it's going to look very cool. Like, I think it's going to be, it's one of those things like, I would never do this normally, but like, wow, like if I'm in a dental office, right? Like, and I'm spending my time doing this, like, that's a great opportunity to do something that you normally would never do, right? And that's with our easel, some of the things that we've created around it, actually relatively straightforward printing. That you know, what do you think? 10 minutes a tile, probably, if that. I mean, you could knock out a whole ceiling.
Not even
half a day, probably. Yeah, not even that. To be
not
honest.
even.
I'm so happy you mentioned that because like I would have not even thought that was an option.
Right.
Like to think that you can use the wall pen to actually print on those types of tiles. Like it's just, and I think most people probably don't think of that either. Just thinking you get these from the Home Depot or wherever you buy them from, and that's it. They're like white, put them up, that's it. They're not really that beautiful. They're not really that great to look at.
They're utility.
Yeah, it's utility, right?
They're designed to dampen sound and give you a ceiling that's cheap, easy to use, hangs your lights, hangs your. I get it. It makes drop ceiling makes a lot of good sense for anyone who's ever had to run cables that doesn't have drop ceiling knows exactly why you have drop ceiling. Like way more convenient when it comes to like accessibility and things like that. It does have the downside of like you are left with a very specific kind of aesthetic, which has been widely accepted in spaces everywhere for good reason. Like it's just a compromise we're all willing to make. Would you consider putting it in your basement of your house if I told you we could print something on it? Would you consider it a little bit less utility, a little bit less Spartan, if we could do something really unique with it? You know what I mean? Because again, a basement's a perfect example of like, you don't know what you're going to need in 5 years, or, you know, as technology changes and it's no longer HDMI, it's this new cable, right? Like you have the ability, all the benefit without like, and it's still like kind of a nice aesthetic. And now, is it a nice aesthetic? I guess we'll find out. But like, yeah, it's certainly an interesting idea, right? I'll leave myself a little wiggle room there.
Yeah. That idea will evolve now that I know that's what you want to do. Clouds and sky. I think we can do better. But it does bring up a good point in that like, not a lot of people would think about printing on tiles and a lot of other things. And it's kind of what Mark and I have coined our off the wall printing. You know, it's not necessarily a wall print. which is why we like to use the term vertical printing, because it allows you to orientate anything in the vertical orientation and print on it. And so like I've got, signage, and there's just a whole kind of market in and of itself, the Etsy store, where printing on things and marketing them and selling them is a totally viable business that, in my opinion, if you can find that sweet spot, there's a honeypot there that we have yet to tap into. Again, two guys with limited amount of time. Like, I will happily share all of the ideas that we have with somebody who feels that they can execute on them with one of our printers to then make a killer Etsy shop. Because, like, good Lord, there's just so much opportunity there. And it's at home printing. You're not mobilizing, you're not doing anything. So sure, your overall project cost might be a little less, now, depending on what you're printing on, like dining room tabletops. You get some pretty cool aesthetics. Like, man, those are $1,000 pieces, right? So like the margins are certainly there, depending on your creativity. But it's totally viable. And Mark and I have spent a ton of time building out a piece of equipment that is specifically used for that type of printing. So it makes it absolutely, simple and easy without having to provide too much thinking. Place the project into what we call the ultimate easel. Little plug. We will be launching that here shortly. And then you can print on it. So again, anything from doors to signage to suitcases,
well, that's actually a good
tabletops.
Point. That's another surprising one, Klauser, is the doors. That's one of our biggest contracts that we've had to date. That is shocking. You would never really, at least I never thought of it or looked at it. And that's the doors into classrooms. Is one of our biggest deals. We print based on what do you call it, Klauser? It's like adult education. It's a high school. It's catered towards vocation.
Technical programs. Yeah. So your automotive shop, your carpentry, your culinary, those types of things.
As you walk into those classrooms, you're walking through a door that is catered graphics to that vocation. So my favorite is still the culinary. I don't know if that's because I have a preference for that particular industry, but those graphics turned out so cool. You have to feel like you're getting like a cooler education when you walk through those doors. Of like, it's pretty.
When the door you walk into is literally a guy like flipping a wok with a flame, coming up on the door.
Awesome.
Like, it's just like it just smacks you in the face on an otherwise sterile school hallway, and it's just it looks great. I was really
another note. And again, man, we could just probably do a whole podcast of like, I'll sit here and try to think of all the things that we think are great opportunities that we've never been able to explore. For any of our operators out there thinking about it, I personally think there's an entire industry. If you just went every single business and pitched the idea, the wall printing, whatever, maybe there's not a great space. Maybe like, for whatever reason, there's a challenge where walls aren't this. Do male, female, or unisex or whatever, print on the bathroom doors. You know how much time and money people spend, especially restaurants, trying to like give a unique and funny way of indicating which one's which, or unisex, or however you want to do it, whatever the indication is. That's an opportunity for branding that like you just don't ever really see. It just doesn't. I mean, when you do it, it looks expensive. It looks like it's deliberate, and so it's a whole thing that if all you did was go restaurant to restaurant, like, hey, take a look at what we could do. Oh, you're a pirate themed restaurant. Like, cool. Why don't we do like the male female Buccaneers? Like let's do something really interesting with whatever your thing is. I'm just like spitballing ideas. You can see why I shouldn't be in charge of creativity. A pirate themed restaurant. What even is that? I don't know what they would serve. Maybe rum. I'm not too sure. But yeah.
Serve at a private restaurant. I don't know.
Take it down because all the patrons have scurvy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no vitamin C. Yeah.
I
get the idea, James. Yeah,
I get the idea. Yeah, I like the tabletops too because you can add that little bit of like personalization to a tabletop. And again, like the key thing I really do love about the wallPen is that like, you're not like, for instance, if you use vinyl, you have this big vinyl sheet that would cover up a table. So now you're losing the natural aesthetic of, let's say if it's like a wood table, you're losing that because it's covered up with vinyl. Granted, I guess you could get a vinyl that gets cut out and you can just paste that down. But then again, you still have the vinyl.
No, number one would be durability. Number two, like that lip is it's just not going to be the aesthetic you want. Yeah.
And it's when you're thinking, and at least for me, when I think about those types of graphics, tabletops specifically, like I'm thinking more faded organic pattern.
Yeah.
Like something that looks intentional. Now I have a tabletop or a desktop at home that I printed that was actually an image, right? It was just a plain white desk. So I put an actual image on it, but my wife has a wood tabletop or a wood desktop that I built, and like a nice faded kind of, Mediterranean tile pattern that like fades into the wood. You still get that natural wood aesthetic. You get this kind of peeling paint aesthetic that looks as if it was, worn in and antique style. Like those types of textures, those types of aesthetics, you can't do any other way, right? Like I want to print something that's going to be brand new but looks 100 years old. Like that's what this technology I think is great at. And there's a whole slew of, techniques in Photoshop to be able to make that happen. So being able to bring those textures while maintaining the natural aesthetic of the wood or whatever your tabletop may be made out of. I mean, that's just, I love that stuff because you would never think it's a print. It's not this like, it's not a feature piece, but it's a beautiful accessory to the whole scene, right?
Yeah. Like I'm also I don't know why I'm thinking this, but like I'm thinking of like those Apple glasses. What are they even called? The
Pro Lens or
the Pro Lens, where it's like oh my gosh, augmented reality. Like you're pretty much taking like the idea of augmented reality and like making it tactile. It's actually like no, it's not augmented reality. It's actually on the table right here. It's actually here, in front of you.
Well, speaking of technology, let's segue that. We've actually dabbled quite a bit in the AR stuff. I think it's impossible not to find it fascinating, like some of the stuff that they're doing with AR. So we've done all kinds of really cool things. We've dabbled with apps that like, you load your image in and then you can hold up your phone and look at like what that image would look like in real space. There's all kinds of like really cool, things that you can do. Probably the biggest technological thing we're evaluating as a company right now, for obvious reasons, is AI art generation, Midjourney specifically. But like, man, if we could start creating high definition murals, even just as a baseline, just as like this is, it struggles with certain things, certain aspects. Text, it seems like it's going to be a while before text becomes possible and things like that. Like just as a jumping off point, if we could start curating through Midjourney, that's a massive focus for us right now. I'm not exactly sure where we're going to find ourselves or like where it's going to take us, to be honest with you. I think like everybody with this advent of AI, we're not exactly sure, but that's a whole space that it might be the best use case for AI art generation that we've had so far. Honestly, is just the ability to create these things. How practical is it for some of these other artists? Not too sure, but for us, if we could even just give the option to our customer, hey, take a look at some ideas that we can turn around quickly. Like, shortening that gap for us, huge. It'd be such a powerful tool for us to add to our arsenal.
Yeah. AI provides us and our operators as well the ability to rapidly iterate creative ideas. Right. You might not be able to get to the final kind of image yet. Right. And we have people that we work with and, skilled artists and all those types of things, but to be able to rapidly iterate ideas and different ideas with different aspects and present, just substantially increases our customer journey and customer experience creating the artwork. And so once you kind of build out a style and aesthetic you like, then you bring that in and you hone it and, create it and personalize it to the space specifically. But yeah, just be able to spitball ideas and automatically see something come out. AI is changing the way we do things in a big way.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised too that there aren't artists out there right now, like who are working with like Photoshop or whatever else. I'm sure there's tons of artists out there who are on the AI.
Definitely,
they're trying to create their art through AI, and it's like the next sort of generation of artists, right? Like, and like to work alongside them, like that would be absolutely incredible.
It's a tool, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Blazer.
I was just going to say, just as a like call to all artists, if we haven't made it clear, like if at any point you think you are interested in working with the wallPen, like please give us a shout. We would absolutely love to have a conversation with you and find a way to make this work because it really is. Whether you are doing AI work, AI art, whether you are doing mural art or any other art form, printing on interior cabinet doors, give us a shout. Like we definitely want to. We definitely want to hear you.
Yeah, that's another thing that I would say is just sort of directly speaking to our operators. Like, if you offer somebody, you say you have a blank wall, you can have anything you want. That's a big question. That's tough for people to deal with, and they're going to put it off Because like, what do I want? Who am I? I'm gonna put a neck tattoo. I want to make sure I get that right. You know what I mean? It's like you have one shot. The mentality of like you've got a big decision to make about what it is you want to do. That can be intimidating, and I can almost promise you, unless you find this like very specific type of person, you're going to delay your process because it doesn't actually lend itself well to what people like to do, in my experience. And I think this is like across the board for us for what we find. What's much better idea is to give them 3 options and let them pick. People are much better at picking and deciding off of something than saying, hey, I've got this wall, anything you want. Again, much harder for them to do. So that's where I think the AI stuff really comes into it. Is like, it's not that it's going to replace artists. I think you're always going to need, we talk about this all the time, Mark and I do. The technical aspect of Photoshop is something that's like quantifiable. You could make a very solid case that like that skill set is a commodity service at this point. It's got a limit on how much value you could really add there. I'm not saying that there aren't high end and low end Photoshop experts. I'm just saying like that becomes constrained. What is really hard to understand the value of is vision. What are you putting and why are you putting it? Is when we say art, when we say we're working with artists, that's the side that actually is the hardest for us. The technical creation of that vision, lots of tools. There's tons of ways of doing it, lots of different fascinating things that we've done. People we work with that are on the technical side of art, like pretty straightforward to generate off of that. But having a vision for what's going to look good or why it's going to look good on the inside of a cabinet, that's something that we'll pay good money for to find out.
Clouds in the sky, it is.
Yeah, Mr. I've got prints all around me. I get it. I'm dropping the ball in this space for sure. I got a white wall. I got nothing to stand on here for sure.
I mean,
for now.
Yeah, but it does prove a point, and it's like we're all susceptible to print anything. You end up being kind of handcuffed, right? So that's why we love working with artists and operators, is because at some point they can help provide some constraint. If we're left to our own devices, we end up sitting in white spaces because we can never think about what exactly that we want to print to showcase the thing that we want to print.
Yep. Nice. And just thinking about like, so an artist has an idea, they put something up on the wall. I guess this is more like a technical question, but like, are there like, what colors can be used? Like, is there like a standard like rule set? Like, is there, do you have to stay within a certain range? Like, what are those like color options for printing, or are there? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
are there limits?
The wallPen is a CMYK printer, and so the CMYK color gamut affords you, I think it's like 10,000 different color variations. It does bring up a fairly interesting and unique point of just printing in general, where color matching becomes a challenge, especially if you're a brand that has a specific color. And there are dissertations and theses built around color matching and color theory, but, broadly speaking, environmental factors have almost more of an impact on color than the thing that you're actually printing. So a color in one space will look entirely different than a color in another space. Light temperature, natural lights, those types of things. So we get asked, can you color match? And in those instances, the best thing to do is to get a sample piece of material that has the same paint as the space and print 10, 12, 15 different variations of the one color. And then we bring it right into the space and then circle the one that matches the best, right? The customer sees it. It's in the space that the print is going to exist in. And we get to pick that color, and then that color is easily transferable into all the images and graphics printed kind of henceforth, right? And that's a much more practical, tangible, tactile way of color selection rather than a lot of the other ways of doing it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Example. Yeah. A good example of that is like, if you ever look, like your ceiling paint is different than your wall paint. Like if you have a white, it's actually different. Like take a look at your house. You'll have one that's labeled ceiling because the way the light hits it really dramatically affects it. So to Mark's point, like being able to bring it in space, in situ, and show, like that's much better than any sort of like, yes, we can obviously give you a Pantone code or we can give you these things, but that doesn't reflect how it's going to look in the site necessarily. So it's a much more effective way to go about doing that.
We just did a job.
Limitations. Yeah,
I was just going to say, we just did a job a couple of weeks ago where that was the challenge, and they were still in the construction phase of the project. So the walls, the surrounding walls, were going to be given another coat of paint. So, anyways, we just brought our printer in and literally printed the like variations of pink on the wall.
That's awesome.
And then the customer's like, "Yeah, that's the one." And then right then and there on my computer, I made the adjustment to the file to have that pink, and we went for it. It was like about as simple as you can get in terms of color matching. And we were their third kick at the can of trying to get this right. They'd gone to 2 other print shops. Like it failed every time. No one was able to get it. And so it's like, well, you're seeing it. This is it. And
you know what it is? Now that we're talking about this again, Clauser, like it really is the game of telephone, which is like, I worked in production as an engineer. So like, I can tell you, like, trying to have clear, concise, simple, and not too numerous points of data traveling through. So like, hey, James, like, did you hear Clauser hates my cabinet idea, right? By the time it gets to Clauser, he just hears Mark hates Mark, right? Like which it's also accurate, but just adds to the confusion. So what Mark's saying is, like, if you think about a traditional print shop of how they color match, like you're going to send a sample, they're going to print the sample, and then the sample is going to get shipped back. How many points, like that will work? Like that's obviously what they're doing now. It's like, it does happen. How many points of communication are you at in order to make that happen? And if you mess it up or miss, like, how many samples are they willing to print? What's realistic for
how much
a company to be able to offer you?
Yeah.
How much time, effort, hassle? So you're talking about, let's just say like you're doing well and like you can get the sign off of what you want delivered to you and then verified on site within 2 weeks. What happens if it's not what you want? What happens if it's not quite there? What happens if you're just pushing these problems all the way down the road? So the ability to literally say, who's the decision maker? This is the decision maker. You're the one that's going to sign off on the thing. Perfect. I'm just going to print, like Mark said, we could do 100 swaths. Like we could do as many as you want. It doesn't make any real difference to us. Circle the one you want. No one else has to be involved in the decision between the literal piece of technology that's going to be printing and the person making the decision. And we can do it like once you sign it, like we don't need to talk to anybody. That can just be the color going forward. You know what I mean? Like really powerful. And there's a whole segment we could probably do on like why some of these things, when you look at the process and construction of like these things become problems and people get fed up and like you create this natural barrier to using graphics because of the process, which is, as an engineer, I can't stand that. Process should be enhancing what you're trying to do, not being a reason to detract from it. You know what I mean? And I get it. That's how you have to do it. If I ran a print shop and was doing vinyl, like, I don't know really what else you expect me to do. What do you want me to do? Take my printer to the site so you can see it in person? Like, that's crazy talk, you know?
Yeah. Like it goes back to the whole T to P kind of thing. Like not only from the operator side of like time to print, but then also from like the client side, like how long is this going to take? We have to send swatches back and forth. It's like, no, let's just do it right now. Circle the one. That's it. Change the files. Done. T to P. Yeah. Like,
love that.
Yeah.
James has been listening. I like that.
Yeah. James is in on this one, man.
It works on both sides, right? It's totally true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I absolutely love it, man. Like there's so much like valuable information here. It's so great. And it's funny, like, being like host moderator of the podcast, but like actually like learning so much about the business and like just being able to ask the questions as a common operator would probably, or new operator would want to know these things. It's great to be a part of. And I'm telling you, like, and sorry, it wasn't Jeff, it's Joel. Sorry, Joel. But yeah, I think the ink is in my veins, guys.
I'm gonna get you a PhD, like some sort of like plaque. It's like you have passed like the wallpen intro course. Like, welcome, James. Like, you're in.
I honestly want to, like, I'm gonna go out. I have a few artist friends. I'm gonna find a print, and I think that's probably a goal. That is a goal of mine, is to get a print.
Nice. Yeah.
I'm gonna go out there and not just be the person behind the lens talking about it, but I actually want to be like you guys as well, and like have the opportunity to bring a vertical printer to a location, set it up, work with an artist, figure all that stuff out, and just do a print. And maybe at some point in time, come back and you guys can interview me.
Totally.
I love it, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, like what did you have to do to set it up? How'd it go? What challenges do you have? Here's a better way to do it for next time. But yeah, I think that's what we should do.
For the audience, this was all under James's own accord. Like, this is just, we're not paying James anything for this.
I'm genuinely interested into doing this and like locking down a contract for sure. So yeah, I think maybe we'll end it here for this podcast. But yeah, definitely, as Clauser was saying, like it'd be awesome to get an artist in on the podcast.
I'd like to see multiple.
Yeah,
like for
sure.
different reasons. Like we'll see if see who's available and who we can bring in. But yeah, it would be great to get their thoughts on it, how they might use it, so you can stop listening to me talk about clouds and cabinets and all that good stuff.
I'm looking forward to seeing the clouds in the sky and whatever else you print on the cabinets. Like, it's gonna be good.
Yeah, good news is clouds are like 1,000 miles away from me, so like I can do what I want. Like, he doesn't have any say in Asheville. It's my shop here.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Until next time.
James, always a pleasure.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.